Connecticut, this is not about me. This is not about politics. This is about doing the right thing for all the families who are here that have been torn apart by gun violence. It's about them and all the families going forward so we can prevent this from happening again. This is about these families and families all across the country who are saying, let's make it a little harder for our kids to get gunned down.
Remember him? That was former President Barack Obama imploring Congress to pass gun control after the horrific shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School in 2012 that killed 20 first graders and 6 educators in Newtown, Connecticut. Well, Congress didn't act, and the shootings continued in schools, synagogues, churches, nightclubs, every single aspect of public life. In fact, a decade later, the number of mass shootings had almost tripled. It wasn't until last year, after the tragic shooting at yet another elementary school in Texas and the racist shooting at a Buffalo supermarket, that Congress passed the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the first major gun legislation in 30 years. It expanded mental health services, strengthened background checks, and closed the boyfriend loophole. But it doesn't include universal background checks or an assault weapons ban, so there is still a lot more to be done. Tomorrow, in the same location where President Obama delivered his plea for change in 2013, people from all walks of life, including Sandy Hook parents, are gathering for a major national gun summit. Speakers include President Biden, former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, Education Secretary Miguel Cardona, Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, and Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut, who spearheaded the bipartisan Safer Communities Act. And Senator Murphy joins me now. Senator, first of all, I want to congratulate you. You and Joe Biden happen to be 2 of the rare senators who've ever gotten gun reform passed. He did in the 1990s, including an assault weapons ban, and you led on this. Do you think that there is momentum, given how angry young people are and how much they are demanding change, and the fact that actually something passed and the world didn't fall apart?
Yeah, the short answer is absolutely. Momentum is on our side. I think we're entering a 10-year period of time in which we are going to win regularly on behalf of kids and families. But it's heartbreaking to, listen to that clip of President Obama at the University of Hartford 10 years ago and think that it took us a decade to do the right thing, to pass a law last summer, the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, that, enjoys 80-90% support amongst Americans. You are right. The sky didn't fall for Republicans, and that was the theory we were testing. We wanted to show Republicans, the ones that voted for that bill last year, that they could vote against the gun lobby. The NRA opposed that bill, and that they would not only not pay a political price, but they would also get a big political benefit. None of the Republicans that voted for that bill lost their races. The ones that ran for re-election all came back to Congress by and large. And I think this summit is going to shed light on the changes that we made that are saving lives right now all across the country. And as you said, the work that's still to be done. This is probably the first time that all the anti-gun violence groups have come together in one place since Sandy Hook for a major event like this. And I'm really glad that President Biden's going to be here to cap off what will be a great day.
Yeah, Robert, my senior producer, referred to it as the Avengers of gun reform, and yet we still have 294 gun massacres just this year alone. The United States is by far the most dangerous country in the world to be in, if in terms of getting shot. It's just here. We're the only place where it's terrifying to go to a mall or a restaurant. What breaks the logjam to get us the rest of the way? I mean, this sounds like an incredible event that you guys are going to do. What actually changes senators' minds and makes them vote for more?
Well, the first thing is to just make clear that nobody should be hopeless. And in fact, though mass shootings have remained pretty steady in 2023, there's actually some really encouraging data out there. Early numbers from the country's biggest cities suggest that gun violence rates may be coming down in this country, maybe even by double-digit margins in many cities. And there's no doubt that if that's true, and I think it is, that's the bill we passed last year are starting to take effect. So it's proof again that when you pass smart legislation, you get a pretty immediate effect in terms of lives being saved. But what has to happen? Well, our movement just has to get stronger. I mean, the real thing that happened last year that was different was that Mitch McConnell and Republican leadership in the Senate just decided that they would be more likely to get their members reelected if they voted with the gun safety movement instead of with the NRA. That was the first time in 10 years that they made that decision because they fear us more than they fear the gun industry. And so we just got to do more of the same, continue to build our movement, build resources, build volunteers. I wish Republicans would vote with us because it's the right thing to do. But if they vote with us because of political expediency, the result is the same. Kids' lives get saved.
You know, one of the reasons that Republicans in these states are so amped up about trying to do voter suppression against young voters is they know this issue is ruinous for them. If young people actually voted at scale, I'm not sure Republicans could ever win anywhere again because young people are hopping mad about this issue. How do Democrats plan to respond to that to get Democrats to do what Republicans do, which is vote on guns as their issue?
Well, the evidence suggests that right now there are just as many people, if not more, who are coming out to vote for changes in gun laws as those that come out to vote with the gun lobby. Joe Biden talks about banning assault weapons all the time because he believes in it in his heart, but also because he knows that's the way to turn out voters, turn out young people, to show them what his priorities are going to be. And what we know from data in 2022 is that young people turned out in that election in part because they knew we did something. When you told young people, hey, when you turned out in 2018 and 2022, you elected a Congress that passed the first major gun safety legislation in 30 years, they responded to that by turning out again in 2022. So we've got to celebrate these successes in part to prove to young people that we can make progress if they turn out.
Yeah, young people are results oriented. They're like, what have you done? We need a list. We need to know what you've done. And you're absolutely right about that, Senator Chris Murphy. Thank you for all that you do on this issue, and thank you for sticking with it. Much appreciated.